Gentlemen, the time has come to stop talking and start doing. We will now go ahead and build a satellite. George Hoover. The race for space occurred from 1955 to 1975. This battle to be the first nation into space occurred between the Soviet Union and America. The leading scientist for the Soviet Union was Sergei Korolev, while the Americans had Wernher von Braun. The race between the countries and scientists depended on technology. What technology would get them into space? What technology would get them to the moon? This battle for space shall change all technology. Hitler had ordered von Braun to start making a rocket. This rocket was to be built in Mittelwerk, a factory whose employees were slaves. The slaves would toil for days to have their rockets tested and launched from Tiananmen. Wernher von Braun was chosen by the Germans as head of rocketry. It is unknown whether or not von Braun favored the Nazis, but he either chose or was forced to help. He first started with the A-series rockets, which failed with the A3 but succeeded with the A5. They then moved on to the V2 missile, which moved into the lower atmosphere whenever it was launched. After World War II, Americans and the Soviets raced for V2 technology and scientists. The Americans first found Mittelwerk, the underground V2 rocket factory. They also found von Braun, the head scientist. While in Mittelwerk, they also found several completed and almost completed V2 rockets. They set up their test grounds at White Sands in America. The Soviets, coming a little later, found several parts of V2 rockets in Mittelwerk. They found a gyroscope from one of the slaves who worked on the V2 rocket. They also reconstructed several rockets from Mittelwerk. They also earned 2,000 German experts in aviation, rocketry, and other such professions. The space race saw through two presidents, Dwight D. Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy. The first satellites, Sputnik and the Explorer 1, the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, and the first man on the moon, Neil Armstrong, were all events of the space race. America has picked Cape Canaveral, Florida as its rocket test site and facility. A satellite vehicle circling the Earth would be of enormous value to science, especially to upper atmosphere meteorological and radiological research. Since it is a project that we could realize, it is only logical to assume that other countries could do the same. It would be a great blow to U.S. prestige if we did not do it first. Wernher von Braun. In 1955, the United States discovered that the Soviet Union was also building a satellite. On October 4, 1975, Sergei Korolev gave the order to launch Sputnik. I was disappointed and a little bitter that we hadn't been able to do it before they did. Looking back now, I'm not sure I was right. The Russian communists may well have done themselves an ill turn by humbling us in the space race. Unwittingly, they made the sleeping American giant awaken. Wernher von Braun. The Soviets may have awakened the American giant, but they took the next leap by launching the first man into space.
We have a saying here when you're nervous about something that you have butterflies in the stomach or butterflies in the tummy. Can you really honestly say that you did not have any butterflies in the tummy before you started?
По-английски есть пословица, что если немножко так не по себе, беспокоишься, то в желудке прыгают бабочки. Можете ли вы заверить всех, что таких бабочек у вас в желудке не было?
Могу заверить.
Yes, I can assure you there were no butterflies, moths, or anything else in my stomach.
NASA, or the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was formed on July 28, 1958. The first of the Apollo missions, Apollo 1, ended in failure, for there was a fire in the cockpit on the day of the test.
Apollo astronauts Roger Chaffee, Edward White, and Gus Grissom lose their lives in a tragic flash fire aboard their grounded space capsule. The tragedy occurred during a simulated countdown for the first flight of the Apollo program, whose goal is to put a man on the moon by 1970. Grissom and White were veterans of spaceflight. Chaffee, a rookie.
Although Apollo 1 ended in failure, Apollo 11 did succeed by putting a man on the moon in July 1969.
I'm going to step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Because of the American and Soviet Union space race, many new technologies and advances have been able to come about. For instance, scratch-resistant lenses only came about because they needed something to protect the satellites when they were in orbit. They had to create fire extinguishers in case a fire started in the cockpit. That is also why they started making fire-resistant materials. Freeze-dried food was created in order to create an easier way of eating and not spoiling food. Because of this, the microwave will soon become invented. Because there was no electricity in space, they needed a way of making power tools work. Therefore, they thought of cordless power tools using batteries. Carbon monoxide detectors and carbon dioxide detectors were created because of the risk of death within the spacecrafts. Satellites, as well as laptops, have helped us both throughout years. Satellites help for communication and positioning, while laptops help with everyday activities of an average person's life. For astronauts who had heart failure after their launch, they created the pacemaker, which allows the heart to beat on its own